Welcome to the space between two lines. I'm Alex Saunders, and this is a space for real, honest conversations about fertility, pregnancy loss, and the journey to parenthood. Here, we hear the stories of people navigating the highs, the lows, and everything in between. A place to feel seen, understood, and less alone. Because every story matters, and so does yours. On today's podcast, we're joined by Courtney. Courtney is bravely opening up about her fertility and IVF journey to falling pregnant with her first child. After receiving her diagnosis, she empowered herself through extensive self-education, becoming deeply informed about her medical options. That knowledge gave her the confidence to take action quickly, beginning fertility treatment within months. Courtney's story is a powerful reminder of what it means to trust your instincts, ask questions, and take control of your own path. I'm so grateful she's here to share her experience, her insights, and the hope she found along the way. All right, welcome Courtney to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I know anyone who might be starting out in their fertility journey will get a lot out of this. We'll get a lot out of this conversation, just from an education perspective alone.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So did you want to just start by introducing yourself?
So my name's Courtney. I'm 35, live in Melbourne with my partner Adam, and currently 27 weeks pregnant with our first child that we conceived via IVF.
So exciting. So when did you and Adam first start thinking about wanting to conceive?
We probably started talking about it pretty early on in our relationship, but got a bit more serious about it towards the start of last year. So I'd been on contraception like my whole life and decided that I wanted to get off it to give myself like a decent amount of time for my body to go back to normal and to figure out what a cycle even looks like, which I had no idea for me what that was going to be. So I came off contraception in May of last year, and then took that full year basically to get my cycles right, which didn't happen, with the plan of starting to conceive in like December, January, just gone. We tried to conceive. The whole process started in December, and then ended up not conceiving until June of this year after fertility specialists and things like that, which I pretty much got onto straight away.
Yeah, and as you said, it took you about a year to get to that point. So did you have expectations moving into the next phase of whether it would be easy or difficult conceiving?
It's really weird because pretty much my whole life, I had always thought that I would have trouble, and had said to people years ago for no real reason that I thought I would need to do IVF. And I guess it goes back to like the start of getting my cycle, which happened when I was 14. And I just distinctly remember having the most painful periods. Like I remember being curled up in a ball on the ground, rocking backwards and forwards, just being in so much pain. Like couldn't go to school, couldn't function. And the doctor's response was just to put me on contraception, like that would fix the issue. Never really looked at any underlying problems. So I ended up getting put on, I can't remember, it was some kind of pill back then. I can't remember which one it was, like Yasmin or something like that. But getting put on Implanon when I was 17, with the hopes of either getting rid of my period altogether or eliminating the pain. So, pretty much been on it for 17 years, like something ridiculous. And every single time I tried to come off it, I was always met with that same pain, and I just couldn't deal with it because I was like, I just can't function. Like being on, like they're prescribing me things like Panadine Fort and stuff to deal with the pain, like rather than trying to figure out where the pain was coming from. So I made a few attempts to come off it in that time, which never lasted that long, maybe like a cycle or two. So going into getting ready to try and conceive, I had no idea what my cycles would actually look like. And coming off it in May, I obviously knew that I needed to stick with staying off it. And from May to December, I only had 3 cycles. So I had one was 55 days, one was 52, and one was like 85. So they were getting longer rather than getting shorter, which you would assume coming off the Implanon or contraception that like your body might take a bit of time to adjust, but that it would eventually hopefully go back to normal, and it just wasn't. So I pretty much got onto seeing my doctor straight away, who luckily, so when I say doctor, it was a different doctor than I was dealing with when I was like younger. One that I had been seeing for a few years and who was female, which I think maybe also helped. Not to say that all males are not good doctors, but I think a lot of people have that experience of maybe not feeling heard or being listened to by a male doctor when it comes to reproductive stuff.
Mhm.
But she pretty much straight away did a heap of tests, gave me referrals for things like ultrasounds, and also gave me a list at the time of fertility specialists and said, if you're not pregnant in 3 months, like you should start looking into getting a bit more help. And me being me, I didn't wait for 3 months. I pretty much did straight away.
Yeah.
Because I just knew, I don't know, I just had this weird feeling that it was always going to be difficult. And it's like, it's impossible to conceive when you've got an 85-day cycle. So even 3 months, like what chance did I have?
Yeah, and I think it's quite a common story that people will go to the doctor initially with these kinds of issues and they get dismissed, and then they might go back a year later and they've got the same issues, and then it might be waiting, 6 months to go see a specialist. So I think this is really important for people to hear, that you can self-advocate and you can self-educate to move things forward at a quicker pace. You just need to empower yourself and know the right things to say to the doctors. So from what month did you go see the doctor when you got that information and she said, come back in 3 months if you're not pregnant?
So I saw her in December of last year, and that was where she gave me the 3 months time frame. And to be able to get into a specialist, they give you a list of a heap of tests you have to get done anyway. Mm-hmm. So I kind of started ticking that off. And as that was happening, the issues were starting to arise with what my problems were. So I ended up actually going to a specialist in January, and it was only like one cycle technically of trying to conceive naturally before we moved on to everything with the specialist.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to the doctor thing, like it's so hard to actually find a doctor that will listen to you. And I just got lucky with one that from the get-go was like, come back in 3 months as opposed to coming back in 12. Because most people would try for 12 months thinking that that's the prerequisite to even get help, and that's not the case.
Yeah. And at that time, did the doctor give you all the referrals you needed to be on the front foot of that to go to the specialist? Yeah, which is great as well.
Yeah, so she gave me like a referral for an ultrasound, my AMH levels. I had to do things like genetic testing, which that brought up another issue. Like sperm analysis for my partner, things like that. And we got all of that done very quickly and got in to see them within like a month.
Yeah. Okay, great. So after you had all that testing, did you get a formal diagnosis from your doctor or from your specialist?
Yes. So from the ultrasounds, that was showing that I had PCOS. So I had a certain amount of follicles on each ovary, as well as also the irregular cycles. That was what gave the diagnosis. And then the other issue we had, which doesn't really lead to fertility stuff, but I came back as a carrier for cystic fibrosis. So that kind of meant we had to stop trying until until my partner's results came through, which would have meant we went straight to IVF anyway. Luckily, he was fine, but that was also something random that came up.
Yeah.
And also came up as I had the MTHFR gene, which was, that also came up in the testing, and a very high AMH.
Yeah. Did you want to explain a little bit about that gene and what it is as well for anyone who hasn't heard of it before?
So it means that this is the MTHFR gene. Means you are more susceptible to miscarriage, and it also means that your body doesn't process folate as well. So a lot of people could be on the completely wrong prenatal for ages, where your body's actually not processing what it needs to get the benefit of it. So I was able to swap over to a different prenatal to make sure I was like actually processing it. I don't have a massive understanding of it because for me, it didn't really make too much of a difference in the end. But I know people who have like recurrent miscarriages and stuff, that can be something that's like an underlying issue.
Yeah. And other than your doctor and your fertility specialist, were you getting any other support with supplements or anything like that throughout the process?
Yes, so I actually saw a naturopath. She was the one who uncovered that MTHFR thing in the end, and was also on CoQ10 for egg quality, fish oil tablets, this other powder thing. I can't remember the name of it. There was a lot in the end.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of environmental changes as well, like trying to hopefully improve egg quality and give myself the best chance of conceiving. There was, a lot of things that I changed at the very, very start before we started the IVF process.
Yeah, and did you want to quickly just talk about a couple of those things again for anyone who might be starting their fertility journey and wanting to make some lifestyle changes, as a first step?
So we did things like swapped over to glass rather than plastic containers. We swapped over chopping boards to wooden chopping boards. We only use stainless steel. Like all of this is ongoing still. We haven't reverted back. Stainless steel cookware. I don't use fragrance anymore. No candles, because that's meant to disrupt like your hormones. Different cleaning products. We swapped over to like eco stuff. A lot of random things that maybe didn't help, but made me feel like I was doing something.
Yeah, for sure. And every little thing can help, and even if it empowers you to feel better and more in control of the situation, then I think that's always a good thing as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you feel emotionally when you learned about these fertility issues that you did have moving forward?
I feel like I kind of just took it in my stride a little bit because I had mentally prepared that that was going to be what we were needing to do. I've almost been always someone who prepares for the worst, if that makes sense. Like mentally, I had already come to that conclusion before I knew that was what we needed to do. So once that was the step that we took, I was kind of okay with it, strangely.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a lot of parts throughout the process that were quite difficult. But the fact that we ended up having to see a specialist, I think I had always prepared for.
Yeah, and I guess what were the hardest moments, I think as well in the beginning when navigating to move towards fertility treatment, what were the hardest parts of that for you?
Probably the unknown, because you just don't know what the journey is going to look like. You don't know if it's going to be a few months, a few years. Like social media generally is only showing the worst case scenario and people that have been trying to conceive for 5+ years. So I think in my head, I just had no idea what the next 6 to 12 months were going to look like, which is quite daunting. Luckily for us, it wasn't a long journey, but yeah, it's just the unknown. I think at the very start is the hardest.
Yeah. So if we move on to your fertility treatment journey, what were the steps that you took before making the decision with Adam to move to IVF? Was there anything you did before that, or did you just go straight to IVF?
No, so once we saw the specialist in January, she came up with a plan from the start, which we felt quite good about, just to have something to move forward with. So her suggestion was 3 rounds of ovulation induction, and then we would try IVF. So we did that 3 rounds, and then I had everything prepared that I could just go one into the next. There was no gap in between. And then, we went straight to IVF.
Yeah. And did you also just want to have a quick chat about the specialist that you use? Because it seemed like you were able to get in very quickly. Like a lot of specialists have quite long wait lists. And I know that, you went to somewhere in Melbourne. So did you want to have a quick chat about that as well?
Yeah, so this is a thing I think no one or not many people know about. Strangely, I came across this on TikTok. But we actually went to a place called Adora Fertility in Greensboro, which I believe there's also one in Brisbane and Sydney, maybe some others in Australia. But it's predominantly bulk billed. So there's no requirements as such to have to be able to go there. I always assumed it was like 12+ months of trying to conceive, but that wasn't the case. So we were able to get in really, really quickly and at a much reduced cost than you would usually pay at the full cost clinics.
Yeah, because they're predominantly bulk billed.
I think they mostly, yeah. So all of it's covered by Medicare, and then they cover the rest. I think it's more for like straightforward cases. If I think you've got something quite complex, like say, for example, if Adam did come back as the carrier for cystic fibrosis as well, and we had to go to IVF, we couldn't do it through them. We had to go to a different clinic.
Yeah.
But kind of like the basic cases, then yeah, it's fulfilled and it was great.
Okay, so you talked about ovulation induction. What did that process look like?
So to start with, in our first cycle, because I wasn't getting my period, they gave me a tablet to take to bring on my period, which for me didn't work. So they did a random start date of my cycle. They gave me letrozole, which is a tablet you take generally for about 5 days to try and get you to ovulate. Again, that wasn't working. We had the option at the start of either doing ours in 2 ways. So you could either monitor it yourself, so kind of like a natural cycle where you'd be doing maybe your temperature or peeing on the ovulation sticks, or you could pay a little bit more and the whole cycle was monitored. So it was monitored with things like blood tests and ultrasounds. And we chose to go that way just to kind of take the guesswork out of it, like to give ourselves the best chance of it working, especially with how ridiculous my cycles were. Like it was just so hard to pinpoint. And the only thing they were adding in was a medication. So there was no checkpoints. So in the first cycle, we did start with the letrozole, which again, that didn't work at all for me. So they ended up swapping me over straight away to an injection, which was a lower dose just to make sure that I didn't overstimulate from having the PCOS. So we did that, which that first cycle did kind of drag on a little bit because I was like figuring things out. And then they end up like tracking your ovulation with the blood tests and the ultrasounds to look for a dominant follicle and then get you to do a trigger shot to get you to ovulate. And then you're told via text what days to have sex, which is
Great time,
a pretty funny way of doing it. Oh my God, it's like, it makes it just so like business-like because you're like, we have to have sex right before you give birth.
The worst.
And so we did three cycles of that in the end. All 3 of them ended up being with the injections and the trigger shot. And then in the 3rd cycle was when we knew we were probably moving on to IVF. So rather than waiting for that cycle or that outcome of that, we did everything we needed to start IVF. So you have to do mandatory counselling. We did that, had like a chat with the nurses where they talk you through what the IVF process is going to look like and all your medications so that we could just run like straight into it. We had no break in between.
Yeah.
And then, we moved on to IVF.
And again, that's something that you got on the front foot of, wasn't it? Like it wasn't something a lot of people might be told, oh, you've got to wait a month, but you did your own research and knew exactly what you needed to do to be able to start that cycle right away. And I think sometimes that's why there's breaks in these processes because you're waiting around for to get information off these specialists and nurses. But you did so much research in knowing like what your next steps were. And did you find that your fertility clinic was easy to communicate with?
Yeah, so we generally just had a nurse's email or text messages. So with any updates in terms of instructions and stuff, you would get a text message. So you'd usually get that at the end of the day as to whether you were continuing on with the medication, like with the injections, or if you were starting a trigger shot, or if your body wasn't responding, you were needing to do an extra ultrasound or something. And then any questions, you had access to an email with nurses. And then my fertility specialist was pretty good too. She would call me sometimes throughout the process as well. But yeah, they were great to communicate with. Like I never had any issues. Awesome. And I think so many people would probably think maybe I was like too hasty or too pushy in like advocating for myself. But I think I just knew deep down that this is what was going to happen and I didn't want to wait. Like I didn't want the delays. I was like, if this is what we need to do, like we may as well get onto it rather than waiting weeks or months to start the next process.
So once you made that decision to do IVF, what did that process look like for you personally?
I'm trying to think. So IVF ends up being May of this year. My egg retrieval was at the end of May. So I, again, got put on like a low-ish dose of the injections and did those for about, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 days. Again, they're tracking you with the blood tests and the ultrasounds. And towards the end of that period, it was definitely looking like my body was going to overstimulate. So I was going to develop too many follicles. So I was at risk of ovarian hyperstimulation, which makes you quite unwell if you end up getting that. So I ended up getting swapped over to a different trigger shot than I was used to, which is called decapeptyl. It just means that you end up hopefully with a less risk of developing the overstimulation. And then it also means you get your period like 5 to 7 days after the retrieval. So that's why they can't then go in and do a fresh transfer. It has to be frozen. So yeah, it was actually such a short process for us. It was probably only a few weeks. But because I was developing so many follicles, my body just felt so heavy and I was like waddling around. Like it was just uncomfortable. Mentally, I think I was fine. I actually found in the whole process, the worst part of it was the letrozole. Like mentally, it just made me loopy. But all the rest of it, I felt like I could handle quite well. But yeah, we got up to the egg retrieval knowing we were having to do a frozen transfer. So they come back however long later and put the embryo back in. And we ended up getting 38 eggs. Wow. And I just remember waking up from surgery and like the specialist comes in and talks to you and I just like burst into tears because I just wasn't expecting to get that many. Like they can give you a rough indication of what they think you'll get. And ours ended up being over that. But she did say to us, like, don't take this as an indication of how many embryos you'll end up with. She'd always said to us, from there, your next step will be the fertilization, and that will be an indication of sperm quality, which at that point we didn't think it was Adam's issue. We thought it was going to be mine. So we ended up with 31 eggs that fertilized. So that ruled out Adam as being an issue. And then, yes, it's 5 days of waiting, basically, which is one of the hardest parts. Every clinic's different, but we got the update on the day of the surgery and the day later with the fertilization rate. And then we didn't hear anything for 5 days. So it's just 5 days of sitting there waiting, which I don't know if that's better or worse. Like, I don't know if waiting every single day for a message to come through is worse than just waiting for 5 days and then hoping that you get embryos. And we very luckily did get 9, but that meant that the issue was me. So it meant that it was my egg quality that in, say, 38 chances to conceive, you're really only giving yourself 9 opportunities for it to work. So it was, my egg quality was always going to be the problem and reiterated for me that we had done the right thing because we just would have really struggled to conceive naturally if we kept trying.
Yeah. And how did you feel emotionally when you were told originally that you couldn't do a fresh transfer and you were going to have to do a frozen one, 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, whatever that looked like?
It's hard at the start because I actually didn't know how long it would delay things. I was thinking that it would be months. I just always thought in my head that we had to have a normal cycle first and then they would come back in and transfer the embryo. Again, total misconception, that wasn't the case. We were able to, when I got my period, I think it was 7 days after the surgery, I started my cycle for the transfer. So when we went in with the transfer, it was only a month after, but it is very disheartening. I think you're just so ready to move on to the next step. And to hear that it's been delayed, like any delay can feel like months when it might only be days or weeks. Like it's just, it is hard to deal with at times.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in this...
And again, it just comes down to so many unknowns too.
Yeah, of course. And I think when you're in this process, time is very strange. Like it moves. You feel like the months go by so quickly, but then also time is slow as well when you're waiting for results and you're waiting for your embryo count and things like that. So it is such a strange space to be in and it can be really challenging, and 1 month might not seem like much for people, but it can be completely heartbreaking when you're going through this process and all you want in the entire world is to be pregnant. So it's really challenging.
It is very, very hard.
Were there any physical symptoms that surprised you along the way with IVF, or you've spoken about your emotional symptoms, but was there anything that physically surprised you, or anything you wanted to talk about?
I think definitely, I always thought with IVF that people end up very, very bloated. I didn't really get that, but I just got the heaviness of like at the end, I couldn't even walk around the block. Like I literally felt like I was ready to hatch. Like I was just in so much pain. Yeah. And I just remember we had our family dog staying with us who's like 17, and I couldn't even keep up with him. I was just so slow. And it's like, it's mean. It's cruel in a way because like your body mimics so many symptoms of pregnancy throughout and gives you false hope. Like not so much with the IVF, but just even with the ovulation induction. All these medications can mimic so many pregnancy symptoms. Like your boobs hurt, you feel bloated at times, you're so emotional. Like I'm not much of a crier, and I was crying at the drop of a hat over just the randomest things. But yeah, definitely like that heaviness leading into the egg retrieval. Like the specialist after the surgery was like, I don't know how you didn't walk in here like clutching your stomach with that many follicles, but
so many eggs.
oh,
It's amazing
crazy.
what our bodies can do. So
I know.
So then obviously you've had your egg collection, you found out how many embryos that you guys have and they're frozen. Then you move towards your frozen embryo transfer. What was the preparation like for that, and what was involved in that process? And how also did you prepare yourself emotionally for that?
So that is probably the part I found the hardest emotionally. But yeah, basically it kind of mimics your ovulation induction cycles. So for everyone doing an embryo transfer, it can be completely different in the way that the specialist will handle it. I don't know what mine was called. It was definitely a medicated cycle, but I don't think it was like a fully medicated cycle. Basically, they put me on a very similar dose of the injections to what I had with my ovulation induction. But because I'd had so much trauma in the surgery with like how many follicles and stuff they'd retrieved, my body just wasn't responding. So this was like probably the hardest part because it kept getting delayed and looking like it might have got cancelled because my body just wasn't going to ovulate. So in that cycle of trying to do the transfer, I have my dose increased 3 different times, almost nearing on being a similar dose to my egg retrieval cycle. And all they were trying to do was get me to ovulate 1 follicle so that they could go back in and do the transfer. So they were kind of at risk of developing too many follicles, but my body just didn't want to respond. Like I ended up having something like 5 ultrasounds, I think, just to see what my body was doing. And they were also seeing that I had, I'm not going to pronounce this right, a subchronic hematoma, I think it is, like a follicle that was filled with blood. So they were getting confused about whether that was my dominant follicle or whether it was something else, which that actually progressed for quite a while. That didn't go away for ages, like even into pregnancy. But eventually I was able to do the trigger shot and ovulated. And then they go back in 5 days later to do your embryo transfer. Oh, sorry, hang on. No, you do trigger and then you might ovulate, say 2 days later or the next day. I can't remember now. And then 5 days later, they go back in to do your transfer. And in that time, you're doing progesterone pessaries. So depending on what your progesterone levels and stuff are, I had to do that twice a day. So morning and night was like sticking a pessary up there. And then yeah, from there, that was honestly like the part that I did not cope with because it's weeks of waiting to see if you're pregnant. And I was so convinced that I wasn't. Even to this day, I still have a list in my phone of all of these tests that I was wanting to get done to see why the transfer hadn't worked. I just didn't really feel like anything had really changed physically. Like I just wasn't feeling pregnant. And ended up going through counseling and things like that, which you actually have access to in an IVF cycle because I just could not stop crying.
Yeah.
I just every day was so anxious.
Yeah. It's really hard. And so then obviously your frozen embryo transfer was successful. And then once you had that news, how did that feel as well?
Oh, it was hard. So yeah, leading up to it, I was crying like every single day and was convinced that it hadn't worked. So I've got a video of me finding out I'm pregnant. And in the video, before I look at the test, I literally say, I'm not pregnant. Like I know I'm not pregnant. And I was so shocked. So I did that on a Sunday afternoon, which I know you're not meant to do pregnancy tests, not on morning urine, but I did, and it showed up. But that week following it was an absolute clusterfuck. Like, I had always assumed you would do a pregnancy test and every single day it would get darker, and that was not the case. So I'd done that on the Sunday afternoon, woken up on the Monday, I could not sleep. So I got up at, I think, 4:30 in the morning to do this test, and the line was like barely there. And I was convinced that I was having a chemical pregnancy because I was just like, it should be darker. So I've absolutely spiraled and gone and done a test morning and night for the next couple of days. So I think on the Monday afternoon, I went out and bought a completely different brand. I got a digital test, which said I wasn't pregnant. The first response of what had shown up my pregnancy test initially, and I was doing the clear blue digital and the normal test, they were saying I wasn't pregnant. And I don't think it was till maybe the Wednesday morning where it started to show up darker again. And in this time, originally my blood test to check my HCG was on the Friday, and I contacted my fertility place and I was like, I cannot wait. Like, I'm going absolutely crazy. And I brought it forward to the Wednesday. And so by then, yeah, it was showing up a little bit darker, but still not what I was expecting. And yeah, the pregnancy test on the blood test showed that I was pregnant, and they got me to repeat it again 2 days later, so on the Friday. And I know other clinics actually do it a bit more frequently. Mine only does it twice, which was quite annoying. And I ended up going to my doctor and getting them to test it a few more times because I just needed that reassurance that it was going up as it should. And then I also ended up in hospital when I was about maybe a week and a half later. So I think it was almost maybe 2 weeks after my initial pregnancy test. Had quite a bit of pain and ended up in hospital and thinking I was having a miscarriage, and ended up getting an ultrasound and things done then. So it was a very, very, very tough couple of weeks, probably like the toughest couple of weeks I've been through in the whole process, but we got there in the end.
Yeah, it's such an anxious time. And I was very similar to you in testing early, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who is contemplating it because our stories are very similar. I had different pregnancy tests. Some said that I was pregnant, some didn't, and I completely spiraled. I had my blood test brought forward as well because I wasn't coping. And then even after having that blood test, I still didn't feel reassured that I was pregnant. So I think that, if you can wait, or even just wait to the morning of your blood test, just hold off if you can, because it causes a lot more harm than good because you're already in such a heightened state and so anxious. And then reassurance from blood just don't even reassure you, and you're still so stressed out. So that would be my one.
It's so hard because it's like it's taking away from being excited about being pregnant too. But it's like every single day from having a transfer, you're like almost bargaining with yourself, like just wait one more day, just wait, like get close to your blood test. And even like half an hour before I did it, I was driving back from my hometown and I was in the car and I was like, no, I'm fine, like I'll be able to wait until Wednesday. And half an hour later I caved, or not until Wednesday, sorry, Friday. Half an hour later I caved and ended up doing the test. And I was like, I should have just waited because it was such a tough week. Like people at work knew what was going on and asked me if I was okay. And I just burst into tears. I was just like, I cannot, mentally, I was just not coping.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I think another thing that people don't really talk about is when you do become pregnant after enduring so much with fertility treatment and, having stages of infertility and not being able to get pregnant, it is so stressful because, of course, when you see those two lines, you've got so much joy and you're so relieved, but then it's instant stress because you've had bad news for so long. And doing the ovulation induction before that, every month being told you're not pregnant, you just expect the bad news to come. So it can be such a challenging time. And it's so understandable that I think people spiral and you feel that anxious. Yeah,
it's so tough that it takes away from the joy that you should have. Even now, some days, I do find, I'm 27 weeks pregnant, and even now I get anxious and I feel like I can't fully believe that it's going to happen. It's cruel in a lot of ways and I don't know, maybe if I would have been that way without the IVF aspect, but it took me a very long time. Like you'd be with like you think I've just got to get through to like the next milestone, like your 7-week scan or your 10-week scan, and then it's the 20-week scan. It's like now it's like I just want to hold him in my arms and know he's here.
Yeah, of course. So throughout the process, how did Adam support you, and how was your relationship during this process? Because obviously as women we have to carry a lot of this, but there are ways that your partner can support you. So was there anything that Adam did to support you throughout this process?
I think it's hard because as a female, like you take on so much, obviously the physical stuff, they can't help you with that, but the mental aspect, like it's such a mental load on the person going through it. And I think for the partner, it's just trying to take some of that away from them. So for me, it was just little things like getting me out of the house to go for a walk, to go grab a coffee, getting me off social media because that was just not great. And even just things like when you're doing the injections, he would come and stand with me and he'd grab me an ice pack and he'd rub my back. And
so
like, it's just tiny little things.
Oh, really
and just, he's always been like the calm to my crazy. So like just sitting there and listening to me and holding me while I was crying rather than trying to fix the problem, like definitely helped. But I think the only thing I would say is from a partner's perspective is trying to take some of the mental load away in terms of like we're the ones doing all the research, changing all of these things in our lifestyles, like just trying to do some of that to take it away from them. Like go find a book that you can read or go do some research yourself, like to just try and help, I guess, is the only thing I could suggest.
For sure.
But it's all the little things that add up to try and distract you because there's really not much that people can do or say, really. It's, everyone handles it differently as well.
Yeah. And so did you open up about your journey or that you were going through IVF to friends and family? And was there anything that they did or could do to support you throughout that time?
Yes, I was very, very open on my side of the family and friends. We didn't really speak too much to Adam's family about it because there was some other things going on. But very, very open about it, which definitely helped. I think, from the very, very start, they were aware of everything that we were going through. The only thing I didn't really tell them about was when my transfer was going to be, just because I didn't want the constant messages of like, are you pregnant? Like, which I know a lot of people do that. I mean, from the same thing, I guess, with how a partner can support you as to how your family and friends can, is just the same kind of stuff, like getting you out of the house, taking you for a walk, going to get breakfast, like things that keep your mind off it and keep you busy. Because I found when I was inside and I was alone was when you would spiral. But when you had people around you, it definitely helped. But again, there's not much that people can do. It's just probably a lot of avoiding certain things that you shouldn't say to people going through the process. Like there's a few comments and stuff that people made to me and I was like, oh,
yeah, and
probably not super helpful. But I also understand that you just don't know what to say.
Yeah, and that was my next question. Like obviously no one ever means malice and their hearts are always in the right place. But was there anything anyone said to you that just don't say it, like not appropriate, not helpful? Is there anything that you can share about that experience?
And you're so right. Like I know that they don't mean anything by it at all. And I know people just don't know what to say in hard situations, but just things like don't say to someone when you say you're going through IVF, like that's exciting because it really is not. It's like if someone had a choice of going through this or conceding, I know. And I know you got the same comments. Like it's not exciting. It's not like you would rather concede naturally, not be going through this process. Like even when my transfer got delayed, I had a friend say to me, oh, that's exciting because now you and Adam can spend more time together before you conceive. And I'm like, no. Oh. And again, I know people don't mean anything by it, but it's just like as much as you can just think before you speak because it is such a difficult, touchy subject. Like emotions are heightened because of all the hormones you're on. And like, I know deep down, like no one meant any harm. Like no one's trying to hurt your feelings. It's just, just maybe like take a second and think before you say comments like that.
1,000%. So,
and also don't ask if they're pregnant. Like they'll tell you when they're pregnant.
Please don't ask if they're pregnant. Something that I was told early on, which is really great to say to people, is when I have good news, I'll share it with you. And hopefully people can be respectful of that. But
Yeah, I
just
did.
don't
That's a
ask.
great thing to say.
Don't ask if
Yeah.
they're pregnant, please.
Yeah. Because you just don't know what news they've gotten
No.
that day. Like they may have found out they're not
Yeah,
pregnant.
exactly right.
I mean, to anyone trying to conceive,
Yes.
regardless of IVF, like don't ask the questions like, are you pregnant or are you trying or when are you having your second baby or all those, like,
Definitely.
I think over time people have gotten better with that. I feel like those comments are less and less, but yeah.
Totally agree. So looking back, is there anything you wish you had have known before you started your fertility journey that you know now?
Oh, golly. In a way, for me, I would say maybe that it's like, well, I guess that you can do hard things. Like it's not as hard as you think at times. It's definitely one of the hardest things I have been through, but like you will get through it. Yeah, I don't know. And just to like, if you feel like something's wrong or you feel like, I think you know your body better than anyone else. So like advocate for yourself. And if you don't like the answer that you're given, go to someone else.
Yeah.
I feel like if I wasn't heard by those doctors and the specialist from the start, I would have gone and saw someone else. Like with having the experience that I did and knowing that that's possible, I would have gone and gotten a second opinion.
Throughout that time, was there any tools or habits other than seeking counselling? Was there anything else that you used to help you get through that time?
I stayed off social media as much as I could because even though I put a lot of filters and things onto TikTok and in Instagram, but it just kept giving me like worst case scenarios every single time. So I spent a lot of time off social media. Also, the other thing that I did, which I know you did as well, was coloring.
Yeah, got that.
And I got you onto that with like best thing ever. Went and spent a heap of money, which I haven't even touched them in months, but that's fine. The coloring books and like texters, I went crazy. I was like, this was what distracted me. And rather than being on social media at night, I would get out the coloring books and just sit on the couch and color. And it just completely, like your mind wouldn't even go anywhere else but what you were doing. And it was such a great distraction. It seems like something so simple, but because going out and going for walks and stuff, like it's great, but your mind is still processing things and thinking the whole time. Whereas something about coloring, like having something in your hand, you completely switched off. So that was the best thing that I could have done and would advise to anyone else going through the same process to do.
Yeah, highly recommend as well. How has this experience, or has it changed your perspective on becoming a parent, so parenthood and just life in general?
I think it just goes to show that you just don't know what people are going through behind the scenes. So I think it's just made me a bit like the way that I carry myself through my everyday life and the way that I speak to people, I think has changed a little bit because, you just don't know what people are going through behind the scenes. And they may seem like they're okay, but sometimes they're not. So, and also just even the things that I say to people in conversations that's maybe a bit wary or like second guessing before I speak. And going into parenthood, I think it's just going to make me so much more appreciative of the process, like, and being a parent. Like, I'm just so grateful that even though it was IVF, I'm just so grateful that this is our outcome. And we get our little baby at the end.
Makes you feel grateful for medicine as well and the things that they can do to support becoming a parent.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, like, what they can do.
Yeah.
And so many different things that they can try if it doesn't work the first time. Like we got very, very lucky, but throughout my research and all of the videos and things I was watching, like there's so much more that they can do.
Yeah.
It's just some of the things that people go through. Like it's made me really in awe as well of females and like how strong we are and what we can actually cope with.
Yeah. And you also say that you got lucky. Like, as you said in the very beginning, you made a lot of lifestyle changes. You took supplements. You really prepared your body going into IVF. You didn't start making changes when you started IVF. you make the changes, in the year leading up to IVF. And I think every little bit counts. So even when people are just starting their journey of trying to
Yeah, that is
conceive,
true.
just thinking about the right supplements to take and things like that. They're obviously everyone's different and everyone's journey is different, but I think it's not always luck as well. It's the way that you prepare yourself, and you prepared your body so well. So give yourself credit for that as well.
Yeah, that is true. And that would be my suggestion to anyone starting to conceive is like change things from the start. Like don't change them when you know there's an issue, because taking those supplements and making those changes, like a lot of them don't come into effect for months down the track. And even Adam, actually, he was taking CoQ10 because it's meant to help with sperm quality. So yeah, that's another thing from a partner's perspective is like be open to also having to change things. But at one point our specialist did say to us that if it did turn out it was a problem with Adam's sperm, that he would have had to give up bike riding, which he would have been devastated about because he does all the time. But like apparently that's really bad for people trying to conceive because you're like squished, I guess.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah.
So being like receptive to also having to make changes. And yeah, I think like, yeah, changing things from the start if you can, or trying to get your body in like the best shape, or like, you know what I mean, with supplements and lifestyle things, rather than doing it once you've found an issue.
Yeah, definitely. And then do you have any final advice to anyone who is listening who might be about to start IVF or just starting their fertility journey?
The only thing I would say, not to paint the picture that everyone's going to have issues or that, I don't know, so many people do try for a long time without uncovering issues. My suggestion would be like when you know that you want to start conceiving, like go to the doctor, get the blood test done, get an ultrasound done, get your partner's sperm checked. Like I would do all of that up front so that if there is an issue, it's something you can try and deal with straight away, rather than getting years and years down the track and figuring out that it was your partner's sperm or you were not going to be able to conceive without IVF. Like that would just be my suggestion. Like I would almost say everyone should just get a few checks done before they even start trying.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And so you started your fertility journey with your specialist in December, and what month were you pregnant in that following year?
So we technically would have conceived in June.
Yeah.
So I think it was about 5 cycles technically.
Yeah, which is an amazing outcome. And you have had such a successful journey with IVF. No one wants to ever have to do IVF, but I think in the big scheme of things, to be pregnant in 6 months, from starting fertility treatment, 6 or 7 months is amazing. So yeah, and power to you, Court, because...
Oh, it's crazy. I think most people would have assumed that, it would have taken years and years to get to that point. And I think I almost held a little bit of guilt that like our process in a way was like shorter than most people, but it was just because I'd advocated so hard in the beginning.
Yeah, we should never feel guilty about that because, no one should have to go through IVF.
No.
And it doesn't matter how short or long it is, it's still a really challenging process. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I know this is going to be so helpful for a lot of people, and especially for those people that might be feeling a little bit lost at the moment and kind of entering this fertility world. It's going to be super helpful. So thank you so much.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
This has been The Space Between Two Lines. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and register on our website to share your story. The link is in the bio. Until next time.